let's say I'm just sort of a smaller, newer provider. Am I really at the stage where I'm going to get a ton of value from joining the TTA?
Well, everybody started with one car. So,
Welcome back to NEMT Experts. I've got Dan Reid with me, the outgoing board chair of NEMTAC and the new president of TTA, the Transportation Alliance. Dan, how are you?
Doing great, Nirav. Doing great.
Thanks for being here with me. Dan, you have an incredible wealth of experience, not only as an NEMT provider, but as the leader of the most prominent industry associations of NEMT, which are NEMTAC and TTA. Can you just give us a brief background of yourself and your experience in the industry?
Yeah, so I got into the industry in 2010, not through any traditional means. I had spent pretty much 30 years prior to that doing mergers and acquisition work and various in tax, but the financial crisis of 2008 forced me to make a career change, and I decided to start my own company. And when I looked around, one of the things that I had known from years of doing transaction work was that industries that were attractive and presented an opportunity were ones where the industry was highly fragmented, where technology had not been employed to a great extent, and where you would appeal to the aging baby boomer population. And, without really realizing it, those three factors pretty much summed up the NEMT industry in 2010. Excel spreadsheets were considered high tech. Fragment in the industry is still highly fragmented, but was even more so back then. And of course, obviously the aging population is a great source of opportunity for the NEMT company. So I decided to get into the business, looked around, knew that I did not want to get into having to deal with snow. So I came down here and looked in Mississippi. My daughters at the time were attending college down here at Alabama and Ole Miss. So we looked here, and then we looked at a company in California, ended up acquiring the company in California, but which is where I was living at the time. But we started our own company here in Hattiesburg, and after a short period of time decided when you're paid by the mile, San Francisco Bay Area traffic is a tough marketplace. So we ended up shutting down the business in California and just moving all the operations in our business to Mississippi, where we start and are headquartered now.
And that was 2010 that
2010.
you started Grove Transit
Yes.
in Mississippi. And more recently, you've acquired another NEMT business in Louisiana, right?
Correct. Yeah. So last year in January of 2023, I acquired a small operation. Formerly had been the Meditrans NEMT division. Paul Broussard had divested himself of that when he became a broker. He divested himself of the operations. So the individual who had bought it was looking to sell it. He had owned it for a year. And I acquired that. That was an 11 vehicle operation in headquartered in Lafayette, Louisiana. And then shortly thereafter, had the opportunity to acquire the operations of Reliant on Call, which was probably about a 50, 60 vehicle fleet at the time. And they operate throughout all of Louisiana. And so we combined the two entities together, and we now have Go Ride in Louisiana.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing your background about getting into NEMT. What I want to focus more on today is your role as basically a statesman and a leader for the industry. So, several years ago, you got to be part of NEMTAC, which is the Non-Emergency Medical Transportation Accreditation Commission.
Yeah.
And, you know, this was back in, I believe, 2017-ish that you got involved?
Mm-hmm. In
Okay.
2018, yeah.
I mean, can you just tell us at a high level, what is NEMTAC and how did you get to be a part of it?
Well, I have a Google search that I get every day that looks for keywords in the industry so I can stay abreast of any, stories or issues or topics that come up in the industry. And, back in 2018-ish or whenever that was, NEMTAC popped up on my Google search one day. And, I clicked through to find out what the heck it was, because I'm always looking for, ways to improve how we do things, and anybody who's focused on the NEMT industry, because our business primarily is NEMT, and so I came across NEMTAC, and it was in its infancy. I signed up for a couple of for one of the advisory committees, and it was later split into two, and just became active on the advisory. Back then they were called advisory boards. Now they're advisory committees, and was kind of around from the beginning. Went to the conferences, and just continued to stay active. And then in what was it, 2020, maybe 2021, they asked me to join the board of directors, and I joined the board of directors. We were going through a little bit of a transition at the time, but NEMTAC is the standard setting organization for the NEMT industry. The ANSI standard, ANSI is the American National Standards Institute, I think is what it stands for. But it is the organization, ANSI, that oversees standards for any industry. I mean, if you look up the standards, I think it would, fill a small library, all the standards that are out there and all sorts of things, but there were none for the NEMT industry. One of the frustrations I always had, continue to have to some extent, is when you go to a potential client, not having the discussion come down to, well, XYZ company does it cheaper. And I say, yes, but we do it better. And someone would inevitably be, by what standard, by what measure of comparison, and you kind of say, well, I just know what we're doing is the right way to do things. But you didn't have a standard you could point to and say, well, they're not doing this, and this is considered industry best practices. NEMTAC has changed that. You now have things you can point to. You now have standards coming out. And so the great thing about NEMTAC is that it has all sorts of groups associated with the industry involved in writing the standards. So we have folks from the broker side, we have providers, we have insurance companies, we have healthcare related individuals. So we have everybody, sort of at the table, and therefore when we come out with a standard, it is generally a well-reasoned, well thought out standard that is representative of what's best for the industry, not any one particular group in the industry.
Okay, thanks for sharing. So this is actually something very practical, and I want to dig in on that. So let's say I'm an NEMT business owner. I'm doing things the right way. I'm providing good service. Some other NEMT business down the street, they may provide services cheaper, but they're not doing it very well or doing it the right way. As an NEMT business owner, how can I get NEMTAC's help in basically demonstrating to whoever I'm winning business from, be it facilities in my area or others, that, hey, you know what? I'm actually doing things the right way, the better way, and here's NEMTAC that'll help me sort of demonstrate that.
Well, I don't think that, and I don't want to say NEMTAC wouldn't be the one to help you, because, but NEMTAC's role, I think it was Peter who says it, is to create the ruler, not to measure with the ruler. So NEMTAC wants to give everyone the tools. NEMTAC, how they would help would be to point you to the standards, that are being drafted or have been drafted and have gone through public comment, and point to this is, you know, what's considered the right standard that you could then take and show to somebody and compare it. But NEMTAC itself is not an advocate or an active organization in terms of providing direct assistance to a provider to improve their business.
Right, right. So like as the NEMT business owner, I can go to the facility and say, hey, you know what? Your liabilities are going to be lower if you use my business as opposed to the one who's not doing it right, because here are the standards that are set by the industry association, and I'm following those standards. And that's something that I, as a business owner, can tangibly show to the facility and basically, you know, win over or you know, make them more comfortable with using my business rather than the
Right.
other.
And you know, hopefully over time, as we develop more data, as we're around longer, you know, there'll be actual data to show companies that follow the NEMTAC standard, companies that are accredited have XYZ percentage lower accident rates, lower, you know, everything, higher on time performance or whatever than companies that don't. But right now we're just in the let's get the standards drafted mode, and we're collecting data, but it takes a while to get significant enough data to be able to provide those additional resources. But and again, that data is being collected for the purposes of being able to write our standards and see what's necessary to do it.
Right. So that's sort of like the underlying value of NEMTAC, is setting standards for the industry. There's also other very valuable things NEMTAC does, like the annual conference, which has been going on for about 7 years now.
I think so, yeah.
Plus about like the other ways that NEMTAC, you know, sort of directly provides value to transportation providers in particular.
Well, it's primarily going to be through writing the standards, through the conference. Those are the two main ways. And then doing the work, and this is not as direct, but doing the work to get people to accept the standards. So working with you know, state divisions of Medicaid as they you know, call to ask how they should draft RFPs, and we can start to give some advice on, you know, what should or should not be in there. Not saying anyone's going to take it necessarily, but you know, talking to CMS to you know, give input from an industry perspective on things that apply to NEMT. Those are kind of behind the scenes, not directly to the provider, sort of a top-down approach, getting people working with brokers. But those are more indirect. The direct is the standards, providing the standards, the NEMT Today magazine that comes out quarterly with articles, and the conference. And then, you know, there are some webinars throughout the year as well.
Yeah. And, you know, I've been going to the conferences myself the past few years. Just this past year, it was in Glendale, Arizona, and we got 500 attendees, which is the most of the 3 years I've been attending. So It's been growing pretty rapidly.
Yes, it has. It has.
TTA, the Transportation Alliance.
Right.
You just this year have become the president of TTA. Could you tell us about TTA?
Sure. So my association with TTA goes back to 2010. When I got into this business, you know, first thing I said to myself was I got to find other like-minded people who I can learn from, best practices, because there really were, as I said, no rules at that time. And so I did, you know, some searching on the internet. I don't know if in 2010 you were Googling or what, but I did searches on the internet, and I came across, at the time, it was called the Taxi Limousine Paratransit Association, TLPA. It was the only organization I could find that had anything to do with passenger ground transportation, you know, that was somewhat related to what, you know, my business. And so I joined and just got very involved. TTA, we changed our name, I think 6 years ago, or maybe a little less, really to reflect the fact that taxi, limousine, paratransit were silos, and people don't operate in silos anymore. You know, many companies that traditionally were taxi companies now call themselves NEMT companies with a taxi model, meaning independent contractors and that they're using, and they came off an old taxi model. They still do a lot of taxi work, but the taxi industry has changed quite a bit. NEMT companies are able to do on demand and get into microtransit. Student transportation has come along. So companies are doing all sorts of different things now, and the Transportation Alliance reflects the fact that our members, you know, are have their hands in all sorts of different pots, if you will, when it comes to servicing. We are a trade association, and we do advocate on behalf of our members, both in DC, not so much locally, but we can provide the tools to people to for assistance. We have a political action committee, and we also have the TLPF, which is a foundation. It's a separate entity, but it's somewhat it's affiliated, you know, with TTA in that manner, and it provides educational resources for as well. So the TTA is much more hands-on, very active. We will have this year, coming year, we're hoping to have 6 different open houses around the country. Our first one is planned in Arizona in February, and then we have one planned up in Akron, Ohio at Diverge in March. Trying to see if we can get one organized in Montreal for May. In June, we'll have one in Boston area. In July, we're going to have one at, we believe we got it set up at Brownability in Indianapolis. And then in August, we'll have it in Colorado. And in September, we'll have one in Baton Rouge at my company in Baton Rouge. And it'll be they're great networking opportunities. Providers share best practices. And I've never once gone to an open house and not come away with more valued information than whatever it cost me to travel to it. And then we'll also have a training association associated with the open houses. Might be a train the trainer on stretcher operations. It might be training drivers on wheelchair securement. We have a great training set up on understanding your financial statements. We have a training set up on ambulatory passenger transportation. Applies to obviously everybody. So we have those open houses throughout the year. We're going to put on a webinar series on basic business fundamentals, not so much operating the passenger part of the vehicle or the passenger part of the business, but more managing, so you can manage your business instead of your business managing you. We'll have a webinar on insurance beyond just auto and GL that you need to consider. We'll have a succession planning one. We have one on, I believe, avoiding HR minefield. We'll have another one. I can't remember all. We'll have 6 different ones. And then we're also gonna, the last one I believe we're putting together is how to use your data better. It'll have a better name than that, but and it's, you know, it's introducing people to the fact that you've got data in your dispatching software, you've got data in your camera systems, you've got data in your fleet maintenance system, and you know, combined, that's some really powerful tools if you combine all that data. So that'll be another thing we have. In April, we have our fly-in up in Washington, D.C., where we spend a day. We have legislators come in and meet with us. People from regulatory agencies will come in, meet with us for a day, and we have various sessions. And then the next day is our visits to the Hill, where everybody, our lobbyist up in Washington, sets up meetings for everybody at their local state or U.S. representative and their senators. For me, it's a very busy day on that day because I now have 4 senators and a whole handful of congressmen in all of our various offices. So we try to pick which ones we can hit and miss and go to.
Well, you just answered my next couple of questions already. So, I was going to ask you, like, hey, as a transportation provider, like an NEMT business in particular, why should I join the TTA, right? Like, what value does TTA, or rather being a TTA member, what does that provide to me? And it's all this incredible wealth of resources, networking opportunities with other businesses to learn best practices, meetups. I, have recently joined the TTA myself. Looking forward to
Welcome aboard.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, it's we also have monthly calls. So they used to be by service line, and this year I shook things up a little bit, and our steering committees now are business development, operations, and safety and loss control. So the calls now, focus on those key areas. Generally, the topic there'll be a topic that will be discussed or maybe presented, and then we open it up for networking and sharing. We get anywhere from, depending on the month, what's going on. Sometimes in the committee meeting, sometimes we'll have 10, sometimes we'll have 50 people on that call, and it's a chance where it's nowhere else that 3 times a month you can get on a call with people who have been doing this for years and ask a question and get an answer. And it's it's an incredibly valuable resource that we offer to members. My theme this year for the TTA is drive value to our members. And one of the things that has been a frustration to me is when I talk to people and ask them, how come you're not a member of the TTA, and they say, what do I get? What do I get if I'm a member? I don't want that to be a question that people are asking anymore. That's
literally the next question I was going to ask you is, TTA, there can be this perception that, it's like, the bigger transportation companies, the more established ones. Like, let's say I'm just sort of a smaller, newer provider. Like there's this effort I have to put in, the whatever membership fees I may have to pay, like, am I really at the stage where I'm going to get a ton of value from joining the TTA? Like, what would you say to someone who sort of comes in with that kind of mindset?
Well, everybody started with one car. So, what I would tell you is that going, from 1 to 2 cars, 2 to 3 cars is sort of, okay, you're driving, maybe you've got your spouse driving, maybe you've got your retired parent driving, but you only have so many family members, and then you got to get into managing a company and other employees, and you're not going to get those kind of tools anywhere else. You're going to learn those from TTA. It is clearly an organization. And what I tell everybody is you're going to get out of it more than you put into it. So if I told you, anywhere else that you put $100 in, you're always going to get more than $100 back, you'd do it every time. If a casino's paid off like that, and that's the way it is with TTA. If you join, if you pay your dues and you don't get on any calls, you don't open the emails, and you don't attend the conference, I would tell you you're wasting your money. We'll take it, but it's not a good investment for you. But if you get on the calls, I mean, I'll give you the perfect example. I went to an open house in Kansas City at Z-Trip. Within the first half hour, we were doing the tours, and I saw all these little Velcro wallets hanging on their board where the drivers come in with the keys. And I said, why do you have wallets attached to your keys? And I think it was Terry O'Toole was leading the tour at the time. He said, we put the gas card, we put the registration, and we put the insurance card in that wallet, and that way it's never lost. Well, that's a frustration we had been having for years. The registration, the insurance card becomes a piece of scrap paper when it's in the glove compartment, and the next thing you know, you go for your inspections with a broker, or worse, you get pulled over. A driver gets pulled over and they don't have their insurance or their registration handy. A gas card gets lost. So by the time we finished the tour, I had ordered those wallets for all of our vehicles. Had our logo, stamped on the outside of the wallet from the company I ordered them from, and they were waiting by the time I got back to Mississippi. And now we don't lose our gas cards, and we don't lose our registrations and our insurance cards, because they're in that wallet, and that wallet's attached to the key. So those little kind of tidbits are just things that just fall in your lap when you participate at TTA. And that may not be a game changer, but it saves a lot of time, and it saves, down the road, a lot of hassles, and all those things allow you to focus on improving your business instead of the little things that get in the way.
Well said.
Run, Bambi, run.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
Okay. Take care.